So today's topic is OSI models or layers of OSI model explained, summary of table of layers in an OSI model. So first understand what is an OSI. OSI stands for Open Systems Interconnection Model, and you can understand this by thinking of it as a 7-story building. To send a message from your computer to your friends, the data has to travel down from the 7th floor to your building, across the street, and end up to the 7th floor of their building. What is the software layers, or that is system or browser level layers? These are layer 7, layer 6, and layer 5 that are system or browser level layers. So these layers happen inside your computer's operating system and applications like Chrome or Spotify or any other browser based or any applications. It is called application layer, that is the interface. What it is, this is what you actually see. When you type google.com into your browser, you are using layer 7 protocols like HTTP or HTTPS. In simple terms, the window you interact with. So layer 7 is the interface or the UI you see in the browser, which is an interactive browser. So application layer is the interface where users can interact. So the layer 6 is the presentation layer, that is the translator. What it is? This layer translates data into form the application can understand. This layer translates data into a form the application can understand. It handles encryption, making it unreadable to hackers, and compression. In simple terms, ensuring the data is in a format you can read. Example, turning bits into JPEG or an encryption SSL message. So this means that in presentation layer, encryption happens. There is a concept of cryptography. Cryptography means the data which you see as a message. If you were meant to send a message to someone on WhatsApp, if you say hello, and that message, when it reaches the user you are sending to, it goes through the process of cryptography to ensure that the data is not seen by the hackers. When you send hello, it goes through a cryptographic. So the message gets somewhat like it is not understandable for users or humans. Then that message is decrypted on the receiver's. So this is what the similar thing happens in the presentation layer. So the layer 5 is a session layer, or that is conversation. What it is? This layer opens, manages, and closes the conversation between two devices. It uses cookies to remember who you are, so you don't have to log in every time you click a new page. In simple terms, the handshake that keeps the connection alive while you chat. So the session layer simply means that whenever you log into your social media handles, it is always that when you close that app and you open that app again, you don't have to log in again. It is because your session is being started. You can simply do an example by yourself. You can try logging in with your social media handles on your browser and check for the cookies. So when you log in, the cookies are generated or the cache is generated in your browser. So you don't have to do login again and again. So when you delete that cookies, you also delete that session. So the session gets deleted when you delete the cookies or cache. So you have to log in again. So now there is a layer 4 that is known as the heart of the model. That is a transport layer. What it is, this layer decides how to send the data. It uses TCP slower but checks for errors, or UDP fast like video streaming, but doesn't care if a few bits drop. In simple terms, breaking the data into small segments and making sure they arrive in the right order. The data is in the form of segments to make sure they arrive in the right order. It uses transmission control protocol and user datagram protocol for streaming the data or sending the data. So now the hardware and routing layers. This is layer 3, layer 2 and layer 1. These layers move the data across the physical world, cables, routers and switches. So the layer 3 means network, the GPS. What it is, this is where IP addresses live. Routers use this layer to find the best path for your data to travel across the internet. In simple terms, addressing the package with a destination IP so it knows which city to go. Layer 2 is data link layer, the local map. What it is, this handles communication between two devices on the same local network. It uses MAC addresses, the permanent ID of your hardware, simple terms moving the package from your laptop to your home router. Layer 1, that is physical layer, the cables. What it is, this is an actual physical hardware. This includes Ethernet cables, fiber optics and even Wi-Fi radio waves. In simple terms, the cables and electricity that turns your data into zeros and ones. So what does these hardware and routing layers and heart of the transport layer and that is software layer mean? From layer 1 to 7, layer 1 is from the cables. It starts from the hardware, or that is like cables, fiber optics to transfer your data, which then is converted into the zeros and ones that happens in the physical layer. In the layer 2, that is data link layer, it moves the packages from your laptop or your device, the data, and it converts and uses MAC addresses for each data fragmentation. It adds MAC addresses, so the transfer of the layer must be secure and it must be clean. For the layer 3, in the layer 3, it is where the IP addresses live. Routers use this layer to find the best path for data to travel across the internet. After your data that is traveled from physical layer, that is cables, then it is assigned by MAC addresses. So now it is having some volume to your data. Then the data is assigned the IP addresses to travel to the destination. Now in the layer 3, it knows where IP addresses live and knows the best path or the easiest path or the quickest path to travel the data. Then the layer 4 concept comes. It is when that data making sure they travel in the right order using the protocols. Sometimes they use TCP or sometimes UDP protocols. So after the data is assigned the protocols for secure travel, then there is the concept that is for the software layers or browser level layers. Then it is assigned the session presentation layer when encryption and session happens, and then the application layer where you actually see the interface of the data that traveled across the cables and all the layers in between that. So the table shows like layer 7 to 1 and its names, that is application layer, presentation layer, so on until physical layer. So unit shows the data from presentation to application to session, and in transport it is segments. The data is converted into segments, and in network layer the data is converted into packets, and in data link it is frames, and in physical it bits. So as I mentioned in the previous section that the data, if it is to be traveled from physical aspect to the browser, it uses, like in the physical layer it has bits, and then for the data link it is converted to frames, and in network layer that data is converted into packets and then segments, and so on. It is data until the application layer. And what is the responsibility of these layers? So the first layer, that is physical layer, it is cables and electricity, and for data link it is MAC addresses, and for network layer it is IP routing, and for transport layer reliability, transfer of the protocols like TCP or UDP protocols, and for session layer it is for managing the connection between the layers, between the data and the user. That means if the session is active, there is a connection, and if the session is cleared or the cookies are cleared, the session is ended and it must start with a new session or the login. So then comes the concept of presentation layer and its responsibility, which is encryption and format. And the seven layer would be application, which means user interface or what you see in the screen or the browser. So if you understand that with a simple analogy, it would be the road, the truck moving the mail, the address on the envelope, the postman, the phone call, the language used, the letter itself. Also, the pro tip to understanding these layers would be you can understand from 7 to 1 layers using the phrase all people seem to need data processing. So thanks so much for watching this video. I hope I made this video insightful and simple. Make sure to subscribe, like, share your thoughts on the comments. Have a great day. Bye.